This is an ABC News special. The Republican National Convention. Live from Madison Square Garden in New York City, Peter Jennings.
Hello again, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our coverage of the Republican Convention in Madison Square Garden. I want to say right off the top, here in the Louisiana delegation, well, they really know how to party, and we had no idea, quite frankly, the people from Oklahoma partied quite this hard. You know, usually when they sign on the convention here in prime time, it's all got a bit staid, the partying is over, the crowd is warmed up, and the principal speaker's about to arrive. Well, the latter is true, but it wasn't like this last night. This is an evening of real work for the Republican Party, and they're going to get two major speeches tonight. One is going to be from the Vice President Cheney, hugely popular. Sometimes, as George Stephanopoulos said, regarded here as the spine of the Bush presidency. And the first person they're going to hear from tonight is a Democrat. Senator Zell Miller of Georgia is the man who gave a keynote speech to the Democratic Convention 12 years ago. Tonight he's here to speak to the Republicans, and they can hardly wait. But for the moment, just let them party.
Proudly served his country in the United States Marine Corps. He has also served the great state of Georgia as state senator, governor, and United States senator. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the conscience of the Democratic Party, the Honorable Zell Miller.
Party tonight, bear one thing in mind. He's about to retire.
Thank you. Since I last stood, thank you very much. Since I last stood in this spot, a whole new generation of the Miller family has been born. 4 great-grandchildren, along with all the other members of our close-knit family. Like you, I think of their future, the promises and the perils they will face. Like you, I believe that the next 4 years will determine what kind of world they will grow up in. And like you, I ask, which leader is it today that has the vision, the willpower, and yes, the backbone to best protect my family? The clear answer to that question has placed me in this hall with you tonight, for my family is more important than my party. There is but one man to whom I am willing to entrust their future, and that man's name is George W. Bush. In the summer of 1940, I was an 8-year-old boy living in a remote little Appalachian valley. Our country was not yet at war, but even we children knew that there were some crazy men across the ocean who would kill us if they could. President Roosevelt, in a speech that summer, told America, all private plans, all private lives have been, in a sense, repealed by an overriding public danger. In 1940, Wendell Willkie was the Republican nominee. And there is no better example of someone repealing their private plans than this good man. He gave Roosevelt the critical support he needed for a peacetime draft, an unpopular idea at the time. And he made it clear that he would rather lose the election than make national security a partisan campaign issue. Shortly before Wilkie died, he told a friend that if he could write his own epitaph and had to choose between "Here lies a president" or "Here lies one who contributed to saving freedom," he would prefer the latter. Where are such statesmen today? Where is the bipartisanship in this country when we need it most? Today, at the same time, young Americans are dying in the sands of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. Our nation is being torn apart and made weaker because of a Democrat's manic obsession to bring down our commander-in-chief. What has happened to the party I've spent my life working in? I can remember when Democrats believed it was the duty of America to fight for freedom over tyranny. It was Democratic President Harry Truman who pushed the Red Army out of Iran, who came to the aid of Greece when communists threatened to overthrow it, who stared down the Soviet blockade of West Berlin by flying in supplies and saving the city. Time after time in our history, in the face of great danger, Democrats and Republicans worked together to ensure that freedom would not falter. But not today. Motivated more by partisan politics than by national security, today's Democratic leaders see America as an occupier, not a liberator. And nothing calling American troops occupiers rather than liberators. Tell that to the one half of Europe that was free because Franklin Roosevelt led an army of liberators, not occupiers. Tell that to the lower half of the Korean Peninsula that is free because Dwight Eisenhower commanded an army of liberators, not occupiers. Tell that to the half a billion men, women, and children who are free today from Poland to Siberia because Ronald Reagan rebuilt a military of liberators, not occupiers. Never in the history of the world has any soldier sacrificed more for the freedom and liberty of total. And our soldiers don't just give freedom abroad, they preserve it for us here at home. For it has been said so truthfully that it is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us the freedom of the press. It is the soldier who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the agitator, who has given us the freedom. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, serves beneath the flag, whose coffin is draped by the flag, who gives that protester the freedom to burn that flag. No one should dare to even think about being the commander-in-chief of this country if he doesn't believe with all his heart that our soldiers are liberators abroad and defenders of freedom at home. But don't waste your breath telling that to the leaders of my way of thinking. America is the problem, not the solution. They don't believe there's any real danger in the world except that which America brings upon itself through our clumsy and misguided foreign policy. It is not their patriotism, it is their judgment that has been so sorely lacking. They claimed Carter's pacifism would lead to peace. They were wrong. They claimed Reagan's defense buildup would lead to war. They were wrong. And no pair has been more wrong, more loudly, more often than the two senators from Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy and John Kerry. Together, Kennedy and Kerry have opposed the very weapons systems that won the Cold War and that are now winning the war on terror. Listing all the weapons systems that Senator Kerry tried his best to shut down sounds like an auctioneer selling off our national security. But Americans need to know the facts. The B-1 bomber that Senator Kerry opposed dropped 40% of the bombs in the first 6 months of enduring freedom. The B-2 bomber that Senator Kerry opposed delivered airstrikes against the Taliban in Afghanistan and Hussein's command post in Iraq. The F-14A Tomcats that Senator Kerry opposed shot down Gaddafi's Libyan MiGs over the Gulf of Sidra. The modernized F-14D that Senator Kerry opposed delivered missile strikes against Tora Bora. The Apache helicopter that Senator Kerry opposed took out those Republican Guard tanks in Kuwait in the Gulf War. The F-15 Eagles that Senator Kerry opposed flew cover over our nation's capital and this very city after 9/11. I could go on and on and on against the Patriot missile that shot down Saddam, against the Aegis Air Defense Cruiser, against the Strategic Defense Initiative, against the Trident missile, against. This is the man who wants to be the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. U.S. forces armed with what? Spitballs? Years of votes can tell you much more about a man than 20 weeks of campaign rhetoric. Campaign talk tells people who you want them to think you are, how you Senator Kerry has made it clear that he would use military force only if approved by the United Nations. Kerry would let Paris decide when America needs defending. I want Bush to decide. John Kerry, who says he doesn't like outsourcing, wants to outsource our national security. That's the most dangerous outsourcing of all. This politician wants to be leader of the free world. Free for how long? For more than 20 years, on every one of the great issues of freedom and security, John Kerry has been more wrong, more weak, and more wobbly than any other national figure. As a war protester, Kerry blamed our military. As a senator, he voted to weaken our military. And nothing shows that more sadly and more clearly than his vote this year to deny protective armor for our troops in harm's way, far away. George W. Bush understands that we need new strategies to meet new threats. John Kerry wants to refight yesterday's war. President Bush believes we have to fight today's war and be ready for tomorrow's challenges. President Bush is committed to providing the kind of forces it takes to root out terrorists, no matter what spider hole they may hide in or what rock they crawl under. George W. Bush wants to grab terrorists by the throat and not let them go to get a better grip. For John Kerry, they get a yes, no, maybe bowl of mush that can only encourage our enemies and confuse our friends. I first got to know George W. Bush when we served as governors together. I admire this man. I am moved by the respect he shows the First Lady, his unabashed love for his parents and his daughters, and the fact that he is unashamed of his belief that God is not indifferent to America. I can identify with someone who has lived that line in Amazing Grace, was blind but now I see, and I like the fact that he's the same man on Saturday night that he is on Sunday morning. He is not a slick talker, but he is a straight shooter. And where I come from, deeds mean a lot more than words. I have knocked on the door of this man's soul and found someone home. A God-fearing man with a good heart and a spine of tempered steel. The man I trust to protect my most precious possession, my family. This election will change forever the course of history. And that's not any history, it's our family's history. The only question is how. The answer lies with each of us. And like many generations before us, we've got some hard choosing to do. Right now, the world just cannot afford an indecisive America. Faint-hearted self-indulgence will put at risk all we care about in this world. In this hour of danger, our president has had the courage to stand up, and this Democrat is proud to stand up with him. Thank you. God bless this country, and God bless George W. Bush.
Senator Zell Miller of Georgia. He would emphasize the war in Georgia. He's in his 70s. He's about to retire. I asked him the other day why he still stayed a Democrat when he talked like this, even though he voted for a lot of those men he was criticizing tonight. He said, I was born a Democrat and I'm going to die a Democrat. George Stephanopoulos?
Well, Peter, Zell Miller may be a Democrat, but he's no moderate. This was not a night for reaching out to the unconvinced. This was red meat for the United States tonight. What was most interesting of Zell Miller was the appeal to God at the end.
In the weeks and months after September 11th, I had so many people come up to me and say how glad they were that George Bush and Dick Cheney were in the White House. I knew exactly what they meant. These men are strong, they are steadfast, they are exactly the leaders we need at this moment in our history. And let me say a word, too, about Laura Bush. She not only reassured us in those days after the towers fell, she has been a First Lady of enormous grace and dignity, and I am honored to be her friend. I first met Dick Cheney when he was a teenager, quite a handsome teenager, as a matter of fact. He had a crew cut, he played football, he was the president of our senior class. But while most of the boys I knew saw the charm of driving back and forth time and again between the two A&W root beer stands in our small town, Dick did not. And when practically everybody in Casper, Wyoming started doing the twist, I can tell you Dick did not. He also spent as much time listening as he did talking, which is pretty unusual in a teenager. Over the years, I figured out that he was someone you could depend on, someone you could trust, someone I wanted to have at my side through all the hard parts of life and all the joyful ones. He is caring and honest, wise and kind, as our much-loved daughters will testify, and our beloved granddaughters as well. We have a new grandson, too, grandchildren as well. One of our granddaughters asked Dick not long ago if he knew anyone famous. And I treasure the fact that she didn't know he was. Dick first entered public life as the gentleman from Wyoming, and he loved his 10 years as our state's congressman. It was his privilege to serve as Secretary of Defense during Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And it has been the highest honor for him to serve beside our president for the past 4 years. Ladies and gentlemen, my husband, the love of my life, Dick Cheney, the Vice President of the United States.
Vice President Cheney may be on the list of people the Democrats love to hate, but in this convention hall, as a number of people have observed, he is very, very popular with the base of the Republican Party.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure glad Zell Miller's on our side. Mr. Chairman, delegates, distinguished guests and fellow Americans, I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States.
Thank you.
I'm honored by your confidence, and tonight I make this pledge. I will give this campaign all that I have, and together we will make George W. Bush president for another 4 years. Tonight I will talk about this good man and his fine record leading our country, and I may say a word or two about his opponent. I'm also mindful now that I have an opponent of my own. People tell me Senator Edwards got picked for his good looks, his sex appeal, his charm, and his gray hair. I said, how do you think I got the job? The opportunities that America offers. I am filled with gratitude to a nation that has been good to me, and I remember the people who set me on my way in life. My grandfather noted that the day I was born was all in a railroad car. But the modesty of his circumstances didn't stop him from thinking that President Roosevelt should know about my arrival. My grandfather believed deeply in the promise of America and had the highest hopes for his family, and I don't think it would surprise him all that much that a grandchild It is the story of this country that people have been able to dream big dreams with confidence they would come true, if not for themselves, then for their children and grandchildren. And that sense of boundless opportunity is a gift that we must pass on to all who come after us. From kindergarten to graduation, I went to public schools, and I know that they are a key to being sure that every child has a chance to succeed and to rise in the world. When the President and I took office, our schools were shuffling too many children from grade to grade without giving them the skills and the knowledge they need. So President Bush reached across the aisle and brought both parties together to pass the most significant education reform in 40 years. With higher standards and new resources, America's schools are now on an upward path to excellence, and not for just a few children, but for every child. Opportunity also depends on a vibrant, growing economy. As President Bush and I were sworn into office, our nation was sliding into recession, and American workers were overburdened with federal taxes. Then came the events of September 11th, which hit our economy very hard. So President Bush delivered the greatest tax reduction in a generation, and the results are clear to see. Businesses are creating jobs, people are returning to work, mortgage rates are low, and home ownership in this country is at an all-time high. The Bush tax cuts are working. Our nation has the best health care in the world, and President Bush is making it more affordable and accessible to all Americans. And there is more to do. Under this president's leadership, we will reform medical liability so the system serves patients and good doctors, not personal injury lawyers. These have been years of achievement, and we are eager for the work ahead. And in all that we do, we will never lose sight of the greatest challenge of our time, preserving the freedom and security of this nation against determined enemies. Since I last spoke to our national convention, Lynn and I have had the joy of seeing our family grow. We now have a grandson to go along with our 3 wonderful granddaughters. And the deepest wish of my heart and the object of all my determination is that they and all of America's children will have lives filled with opportunity, and that they will inherit a world in which they can live in freedom, in safety, and in peace. Four years ago, some said the world had grown calm, and many assumed that the United States was invulnerable to danger. That thought might have been comforting. It was also false. Like other generations of Americans, we soon discovered that history had unexpected duties in store for us. September 11th, 2001 made clear the challenges we face. On that day, we saw the harm that could be done by 19 men armed with knives and boarding passes. America also awakened to a possibility even more lethal. This enemy, whose hatred of us is limitless, armed with chemical, biological, or even nuclear weapons. Just as surely as the Nazis during World War II and the Soviets during the Cold War, the enemy we face today is bent on our destruction. As in other times, we are in a war we did not start and have no choice but to win. Firm in our resolve, focused on our mission, and led by a superb commander-in-chief, we will prevail. The fanatics who killed some 3,000 of our fellow Americans may have thought they could attack us with impunity, because terrorists had done so previously. But if the killers of September 11th thought we had lost the will to defend our freedom, they did not know America, and they did not know George W. Bush. From the beginning, the President made clear that the terrorists would be dealt with, and that anyone who supports, protects, or harbors them would be held to account. In a campaign that has reached around the world, we have captured or killed hundreds of al-Qaeda. In Afghanistan, the camps where terrorists trained to kill Americans have been shut down and the Taliban driven from power. In Iraq, we dealt with a gathering threat and removed the regime of Saddam Hussein. "17 months ago, he controlled the lives and the fortunes of 25 million people. Tonight, he sits in jail." President Bush does not deal in empty threats and halfway measures, and his determination has sent a clear message. Just 5 days after Saddam was captured, the government of Libya agreed to abandon its nuclear weapons program and turn the materials over to the United States. Tonight, the uranium, the centrifuges, and plans and designs for nuclear weapons that were once hidden in Libya are locked up and stored away in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, never again to threaten America. The biggest threat we face today is having nuclear weapons fall into the hands of terrorists. The President is working with many countries in a global effort to end the trade and the transfer of these deadly technologies. The most important result this far, and it is a very important one, is that the black market network that supplied nuclear weapons technology to Libya as well as to Iran and North Korea has been shut down. The world's worst source of nuclear weapons proliferation is out of business, and we are safer as a result. In the global war we are fighting, we owe a mighty debt to the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. They fought the enemy with courage and reached out to civilians with compassion, rebuilding schools and hospitals and roads. They've won stunning victories. They've faced hard duty and long deployments, and they've lost comrades. More than 1,100 brave Americans whose memories this nation will honor forever. The men and women who wear the uniform of the United States represent the very best of America. They have the thanks of our nation, and they have the confidence, the loyalty, and the respect of their Commander-in-Chief. In this election, we will decide who leads our country for the next 4 years. Yet there is more in the balance than that. Moments come along in history when leaders must make fundamental decisions about how to confront a long-term challenge abroad or how to best keep the American people secure at home. We faced such a moment after World War II when we put in place the policies that defended America throughout the Cold War. Those policies containing communism, deterring attack by the Soviet Union, promoting the rise of democracy, were carried out by Democratic and Republican presidents in the decades that followed. nation has reached another of those defining moments. Under President Bush, we have put in place new policies and created new institutions to defend America, to stop terrorist violence at its source, and to help move the Middle East away from old hatreds and resentments and toward the lasting peace that only freedom can bring. This is the work not of months, but of years, and keeping these commitments is essential to our future security. For that reason, ladies and gentlemen, the election of 2004 is one of the most important, not just in our lives, but in our history. And so it is time to set the alternatives squarely before the American people. The President's opponent is an experienced senator. He speaks often of his service in Vietnam, and we honor him for it. But there is also a record of more than 3 decades since. And on the question of America's role in the world, the differences between Senator Kerry and President Bush are the sharpest, and the stakes for the country are the highest. History has shown that a strong and purposeful America is vital to preserving freedom and keeping us safe. Yet time and again, Senator Kerry has made the wrong call on national security. Senator Kerry began his political career by saying he would like to see our troops deployed only at the directive of the United Nations. During the 1980s, Senator Kerry opposed Ronald Reagan's major defense initiatives that brought victory in the Cold War. And in 1991, when Saddam Hussein occupied Kuwait and stood poised to dominate the Persian Gulf, Senator Kerry voted against Operation Desert Storm. Even in this post-9/11 period, Senator Kerry doesn't appear to understand how the world has changed. He talks about leading a more sensitive war on terror, as though Al-Qaeda will be impressed with our softer side. He declared at the Democratic Convention that he will forcefully defend America after we have been attacked. My fellow Americans, we have already been attacked. We're faced with an enemy who seeks the deadliest of weapons to use against us, and we cannot wait until the next attack. We must do everything we can to prevent it, and that includes the use of military force. Senator Kerry denounces American action when other countries don't approve, as if the whole object of our foreign policy were to please a few persistent critics. But in fact, the global war on terror, as in Afghanistan and Iraq, President Bush has brought many allies to our side. But as the President has made very clear, there is a difference between leading a coalition of many nations and submitting to the objections of a few. George W. Bush will never seek a permission slip to defend the American people. Senator Kerry also takes a different view when it comes to supporting our military. Although he voted to authorize force against Saddam Hussein, he then decided he was opposed to the war and voted against funding for our men and women in the field. He voted against body armor, ammunition, fuel, spare parts, armored vehicles, extra pay for hardship duty, and support for military families. Senator Kerry is campaigning for the position of Commander-in-Chief. Yet he does not seem to understand the first obligation of a Commander-in-Chief, and that is to support American troops in combat. In his years in Washington, John Kerry has been one of 100 votes in the United States Senate, and fortunately, on matters of national security, his views rarely prevailed. But the presidency is an entirely different proposition. A senator can be wrong for 20 years without consequence to the nation. But a president always casts the deciding vote. And in this time of challenge, America needs and America has a president we can count on to get it right. On Iraq, Senator Kerry has disagreed with many of his fellow Democrats, but Senator Kerry's liveliest disagreement is with himself. His back and forth reflects a habit of indecision and sends a message of confusion. And it's all part of a pattern. He has, in the last several years, been for the No Child Left Behind Act and against it. He has spoken in favor of the North American Free Trade Agreement and against it. He is for the Patriot Act and against it. Senator Kerry says he sees two Americas. It makes the whole thing mutual. America America sees two John Kerrys. The other candidate in this race is a man our nation has come to know and one I've come to admire very much. I watch him at work every day. I have seen him face some of the hardest decisions that come to the Oval Office and make those decisions with the wisdom and the humility Americans expect in their president. George W. Bush is a man who speaks plainly and who means what he says. He is a person of loyalty and kindness. And he brings out those qualities in those around him. He's a man of great personal strength, and more than that, a man with a heart for the weak and the vulnerable and the afflicted. We all remember that terrible morning when, in the space of just 102 minutes, more Americans were killed than we lost at Pearl Harbor. We remember the George W. Bush saw this country through grief and tragedy. He has acted with patience and calm and a moral seriousness that calls evil by its name. In the great divide of our time, he has put this nation where America always belongs, against the tyrant. Fellow citizens, our nation is reaching the hour of decision, and the choice is clear. President Bush and I will wage this effort with complete confidence in the judgment of the American people. The signs are good, even in Massachusetts. According to a news account last month, people leaving the Democratic Convention asked a Boston policeman for directions. He replied, "Leave here and go vote Republican." President Bush and I are honored to have the support of that police officer and of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents from every calling in American life. We are so fortunate, each and every one of us, to be citizens of this great nation and to take part in the defining event of our democracy, choosing who will lead us. The historian Bernard DeVoto once wrote that when America was created, the stars must have danced in the sky. Our president understands the miracle of this great country. He knows the hope that drives it and shares the optimism that has long been so important a part of our national character. He gets up each and every day, determined to keep our great nation safe, so that generations to come will know the freedom and opportunities we have known and more. When this convention concludes tomorrow night, we will go forth with confidence in our cause and in the man who leads it, by leaving no doubt where we stand and asking all Americans to join us. We will see our cause to victory. Thank you very much.
Vice President Cheney, as he pointed out, comes with a large family, and almost every member of the family and several of his grandchildren are up there as well. The only person missing is Mary Cheney, his openly gay daughter. Though the Vice President's wife has been very supportive, this is a sensitive issue for her and the Republican Party. There's no doubt, I think, in any observer's mind here that this was the most energized night of the Democratic Party over that great sign of land of opportunity. Republican delegates here in New York first partied and then roared as first a Democratic senator turned on his own party and the leader of his own party and took on John Kerry in partisan ways that I think a lot of political observers have not heard used in many, many ways. And then Vice President Cheney, who is profoundly popular with the backbone of the Republican Party, came out and did what he was required to do in no uncertain terms. George Stephanopoulos, who we've been sitting here and chatting about it, conventions are designed to do certain things on every night. Take us very quickly through Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Monday night, raising the stakes. Rudolph Giuliani and John McCain reminding people about 9/11 and reminding the country that we are still at war. Last night, Arnold Schwarzenegger inspires the country, and the First Lady paints a portrait of President Bush, the decision maker. Tonight, you had a portrait of John Kerry by Zell Miller and Dick Cheney, painting him as an unacceptable alternative. Tomorrow night, President Bush lays out his plan.
Are you surprised that the senator from Georgia went after John Kerry as vigorously, and that's an understatement, as we both know, as he did?
That's Zell Miller. I mean, he is a tough politician, a former Marine, but I wonder if it was smart to have him out there in such a hot fashion. As he was talking, I was getting emails saying, you know, this reminds me of Houston, 1992. Pat Buchanan. Now, Zell Miller is no Pat Buchanan, but it was a very, very hot speech, not likely to convince, as I said before, many of the unconvinced.
This is something else. This is a convention, as was the Democratic convention, designed for the television viewers at home. And we make the point, as we try to all the time, also vigorously, that people at home know what they've heard and can make judgments about this. But if this was an appeal tonight to that small slice of voters who have still allegedly not made up their minds about the two candidates, what does it accomplish?
I don't think it was, actually. I think this was a mobilization. conservative Christian evangelical voters who stayed home in 2000. This was aimed straight at them.
Very interesting. Thanks very much, George Stephanopoulos, and thank you for joining us on the ABC television network. You can watch us all day and all long, gavel-to-gavel coverage from the Republican Convention on ABC News Now, on the digital channel in many cities in the United States, and or on the internet here at home and around the world. There'll be a good deal more analysis on Nightline, a chance to review the convention up until now with Ted Koppel. Thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of all my colleagues who have worked the floor and worked the convention and worked the perimeter where George Bush's policies are not held in the same regard, thank you very much for joining us.
This has been an ABC News special, the Republican National Convention. For continuing coverage, stay with ABC News, abcnews.com, and ABC News Radio. This has been a presentation of ABC News.